Hey everyone, it's Twist65 again. Today we're going to build, paint, and display Airfix's Bristol Beaufighter TF.X kit in 1/72 scale. Upon opening the box, we have the decals, which later will become a right pain in the ass. And the rest is your standard issue soft blue Airfix plastic. The flattened tires are a nice touch if you're building wheels down. Right off the bat, I'll state that while most of my airplane kits have and are Airfix, I'm becoming less and less endeared to their building design. And this kit was purchased because it gave me free shipping and other stuff I really wanted. That, and the plane was built by the Bristol Company, a town in England that my hometown in Pennsylvania is named after. Because of the softness of the plastic, I tend to clip parts back to the screw gate still attached, then carefully work my way back to the part using a sanding stick. Assembly, as usual, starts with the cockpit. For this particular airplane build, we also have a rear-facing gunner's area to build up. Interestingly, Airfix provides the side control panels as separate parts. This allows for a more detailed surface than other kits at this scale. The rear wheel needs to be added before closing up the fuselage, so this is an early decision point for wheels up or wheels down. We also need to paint all the interior bits, so out comes the standard ugly green interior color, as well as some shading and grime from a layer of black enamel wash. We start this process with the gloss varnish to protect the paint and allow the thinned enamel paints to flow into all the recessed areas. Odorless thinner dampened on a cotton bud is used to remove the excess enamel wash, and after an overnight dry, everything is sealed under matte varnish. We also need to add from the decal sheet the instrument panel. It really doesn't show in the final build, but if someone looks really close into the cockpit, it's better than having just a flat black panel. It's time to drill out the holes for the torpedo rack. Using a 2mm drill, and lucky for me, my pin vise came with a bunch of Euro-sized bits. I used a piece of scrap foam and sanded the drill exits flush. That part is then added to the bottom of the plane, finishing the fuselage body. On to the wings. There are a couple more decision points here as well. Apparently the planes flown in Burma had rockets under wing, but I chose a torpedo bomber, and that has a bump inboard from the engine nacelles that needs to be removed. I don't know what the bump is on the real airplane, but it wasn't there. I chose to tape off the surrounding areas and started with a coarse sanding stick and worked my way down to finer and finer grits until the wing surface was smooth. I never really liked sanding away details, as adding the small bumps would have been a lot easier if you wanted to build the Burma plane instead of the Scottish plane. Some panel lines had to be rescribed. Not my favorite chore. Like I said, Airfix seems to make odd choices. With the wings glued up, it was a matter of slipping them over the stays from the cockpit floor assembly. First the port side, then the starboard side. Last of the big decisions, flaps up or flaps down. I chose down, assuming the hydraulics would not be running if the engines weren't turning. The tail sections are different for each scheme, so pay attention to which tail and panels go with the scheme you are painting. The tail and rudder are an easy fit and add. Now on to the build part that gave me the most trouble, and it was also unnecessary. I read through the instructions 4 or 5 times, yet it was never very clear. In the end, I added the assembled radial engine directly to the wing nacelles. Of course, that needed trimming to fit. I then went back and added the 3 parts that make up the engine nacelle and the engine shroud. All of it keys only a certain way, but it's not a good way to build up an engine. Most companies make it in 2 pieces, which works very well for people who only have 2 hands. Lastly, I built the torpedo from 2 halves, 2 body stanchions, the brass propeller, and the fins. This step was a bit out of order as I didn't want to add the landing gear until everything was painted up. Painting started with pure white, rear of the gunner's sponson, back to the tail. I added 3 8mm strips of Tamiya tape where the white invasion stripes were located, and then I sprayed black. I lost a video of the painting, but the key is to use really low pressure and a light trigger to control them. An overnight cure let me recover all the invasion stripes and mask where the Sky S undercolor would go. The instruction art showed a hard line, so masking was the way to go. And after another 24 hours of curing time, a remask for the top coat. This time, I lightened the dark gray with some light gray, about a 10-to-1 ratio. The paint scheme is really pretty simple. And now the big reveal for the stripes. And removed the tape as soon as I saw the paint wasn't shiny wet. About 10 minutes. If I had any bleed under the tape, I could clean it up now, but this time there was no bleed. The front engine covers were also painted black. After all the masking was off and any touch-ups completed, it was completely covered in gloss varnish for the decals. Again, a minimal look, with no insignia granules on the underside. And I will say that the unit markings were the right pain in the ass part. The thin letters are prone to rippling and ripping, and I had to stitch several of them back together and get them to lay down with lots and lots of microsaw. Weathering was my standard affair, brown enamel on the lighter underside and black enamel on the darker top side. And a mixture of brown and black pastels were used to show engine exhaust and machine gun powder streaking down the wings and on the body. The top side also got an all-over powder filter with white pastel brushed into the gray to give it a patched, sun-faded look to the paint. After I was happy with the way the pastels and the enamels looked, everything got a matte finish. I then went back and added the landing gear, the propellers, and the torpedo, along with all the clear plastic bits. Landing light in the wing, and there's some directional markers on the tips, in addition to the canopies on the front and the rear. And that wraps up this British torpedo bomber as it was flown out of Aberdeenshire, Scotland on October 9th, 1944. If you enjoyed this build, please consider liking and subscribing. It does help the algorithm.